You're listening to the IB4E Coaching Podcast.
Brought to you by IB4E Coaching, business coaching for executives, entrepreneurs, and small business professionals. Learn more at ib4e-coaching.com.
Hey, Coach Harlan here. Welcome back to the podcast. Hope you guys are having a great week. I'm having a great week, and I'm excited to introduce you to my guest today. Please help me welcome Lyubim Kogan. Lyubim Kogan is a five-time first-generation immigrant, a Winter Olympian, NYU Stern graduate, a 9/11 survivor, and the founder of Wings for Heroes, a mission helping amputee veterans reclaim dignity, purpose, and joy through paragliding and adventure. His journey spans Wall Street trading desks, kitchen tables across Main Street America, crisis leadership in war zones, and humanitarian missions across continents. He's a national best-selling co-author with Steve Forbes and has shared the stage at the United Nations with Brian Tracy. Today, he speaks about what it means to keep a promise, especially when there's no script, no paycheck, and no clear path forward. Lyubim, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Harlan. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. It's good to. So tell me about this five-time first generation. You've moved a lot. I mean, you have a slight accent, so I know you're not from America. Where are you from originally?
I was born in the former Soviet Union, and I grew up in the 70s and the 80s. I am a Cold War child. And my image of the United States was that Ronald Reagan is sitting in his office and he has this red button. At any point, he can go boom, and we're finished. So I immigrated to the United States in 1992. And I found that what I thought about the United States, or what I was brainwashed to believe about the United States, was completely not true. To me, America and the Americans were really generous. You know, I was 17 years old, and well, actually, I said that I had two dreams when they came to the United States. One was mine, and the second dream was my dad's. My dad wanted me to go to a really good school, really good business school, and I wanted to ski, and my dream was to qualify for the Olympics. I left really fast. My dad came home one day and he said, "Lyubim, we are leaving." I said, "When?" He said, "In about 3 or 4 hours." I said, "Where are we going?" He said, "The United States." I said, "For how long?" And he said, "Forever." Wow. So I had a few hours to pack up, and I remember I just looked around and I thought, okay, I want to ski. So I took my ski boots, my helmet, my suit, I packed it in the back, I wore my training suit, and I remember that on the plane I didn't even have socks. And that's how I came to the United States. We came to New Jersey. That's where my uncle lived for about 5 years. They immigrated in the late 80s. And I asked him to help me find a school where I could ski. And he wrote to different schools in the Northeast, and the National Sports Academy in Lake Placid. They invited me. It was like a day-long meeting, just met everybody. It's a small boarding school, so meeting coaches, the administrator, the principal of the school, and then they offered me a scholarship. So, you know, I came to the States in October, and then in December I found myself in the boarding school where I could learn English, I could live there. They fed me, and they gave me skis, and they said, okay, outside of school you can go ski as much as you want to. So I'm saying that I got really lucky, because if you think about communities for immigrants in the United States, you can live in one place, like, you know, in Brighton Beach or somewhere in New Jersey, and probably 20, 30 years later, you don't really speak English fluently. But for me, it was a clean break. It was like a clean cut. And my roommate he wanted to go to school, to university, and become an English teacher. So we spent endless hours just learning words, and his goal was to explain new words that I didn't know without using a dictionary. So that was a big bump in learning English. And then I spent 1 year at that school. I got into a small community college, and then I have a part in my life where I tell everybody, you know, be careful what you wish for. Because after graduating a small school, I got into New York University Stern School of Business. And when I came to New York, I realized that if I wanted to ski, I will have to do a 600-mile commute every weekend. And, in my mind, not skiing, it was not even an option. So I had the schedule where I would finish on Thursday. On Thursday, I would finish with my classes. I would walk to my dorm. I would change. I would get my stuff, and I would go to the bus station in New York City, and I would take the bus to Albany, New York, which is 150 miles. Then I would pick up my car, and I would drive another 150 miles to the Adirondacks, to Lake Placid. Then I would ski on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And on Sunday night, I'd come back unless it was a competition season. Because if you compete Saturday and Sunday, you wait for the awards ceremony, and we would go to like Vermont, New Hampshire, and sometimes as far as Maine. It wasn't really practical. There was no way I could come back on that night. So I would leave really early in the morning, and I would make it in New York City just for my classes. Then, I would do my training before school. And then on Thursday, I would get on the bus and repeat that. And I've done that for more than 2 years.
But it paid off. You made it to the Winter Olympics.
Yeah, I'm saying I got lucky. And you know how they say that people who are most prepared get lucky? And that was, it was the case, because in the winter of 97, 98, it was a really warm winter. And our biggest qualifier, the last qualifier, was the World Cup in Poland. And it was raining, and the organizers, they said there will be no practice on the hill. They closed it, and they were packing it by foot just to have it ready for the weekend. So what we did was we would get in our car in the morning, like the whole team. We would drive across the Tatra Mountains from Poland to Slovakia. We would jump in the morning. We would have lunch. We would jump in the afternoon. And I'm saying jump because I ski jump. You go at 60 miles an hour down the ramp. You split your skis and you get in between and you fly.
Wow.
So after doing that, and then after a second training session, we would get in our team bus and drive back to Poland. And we would repeat it the next morning. And if you think about the national team athletes, their life is really structured and organized. They just show up. They know a year ahead where they're going to be on every weekend. So the guys are used to just showing up, performing, and then moving on. But it wasn't the case that year. And I'm pretty sure because of my commute, to me, it was just like a normal thing. But for all of them, after doing that for a week, they got pretty tired. And, I knew that I wasn't going to go to the Olympics to win a medal. It was not even, the chance was zero. I think going to the Olympics, it was maybe like a 4% chance. But it so happened that, I picked the third spot on the team, and I got to go to Japan.
Nice.
That was really cool to go to the Olympics and go to the Japan, because the next Olympics were in Salt Lake City, which was right next to Colorado. It wasn't really a far trip, but I got really lucky with both qualifying and taking a long trip across the world to Japan.
Good job. I had somebody tell me years ago that there's no such thing as luck. He said that luck is the residue of design. You designed, you did everything you needed to do. You put in the practice hours, you hustled, you learned. So it wasn't that luck just happened. You fought for it and you got it. That's awesome.
It's true. I think it's a universal law for everyone. It's like if you look at if you watch a sport, you will see any sport, you will see like the perfect conditions are the best athletes get perfect conditions most of the time. And if you wonder about that, it's just because, the way the sport is structured and everything lines up. So yeah, absolutely. Luck is mostly a result of your long hours and years of preparation.
Exactly. All right. I want to get into this more. I want to really get into Wings for Heroes because I think it's a phenomenal program. All that you've done with that, and talk about some of the things you're working on, some of the people you've already helped, and what do you think about the future. But before we get started, I've got 10 questions that I like to ask all my guests. Now, my listeners know these are the questions made famous on the TV show Inside the Actor's Studio, where the host James Lipton asks these same questions of his Hollywood guests from TV, film, and stage. And I figure if they're good enough for the Hollywood elite, they're certainly good enough for my guests. So, Lyubim, if you're ready, I have 10 questions for you.
I will do my best. I'm ready.
Okay, no worries. All right. What is your favorite word?
Love.
What is your least favorite word?
Quit.
What turns you on?
I would say a conversation, a really deep, meaningful conversation where you connect with another person or with people.
Nice. What turns you off?
Apathy.
Hmm. What sound or noise do you love?
Probably a running water, like a stream or a river.
Nice. What sound or noise do you hate?
Traffic.
Yes. Plenty of
Traffic
traffic up
in
in
New
Logan.
York City, okay? Let's
Yes.
be more specific.
Yes. Oh, come down to Atlanta, you'll see traffic. I guarantee you.
Okay.
What is your favorite curse word?
SHI. Fill in the last one.
Oh, that's it. No, that's a good one. That's a good one. It's popular. All right. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I wouldn't attempt. I really admire first responders and people who defend their freedom. So, people who sacrifice themselves, who put their lives on the line just to protect others.
Nice. Very nice. What profession would you not like to do?
Accounting. I
Wait
have
a
a
minute.
degree in it, so I wouldn't want to do accounting because you're recording of what's happened, and you have to put it in the very specific boxes. Yeah, there's a lot of creativity, but let's say accounting.
Yeah. You don't want too much creativity in accounting. That could be bad. All right. And finally, Lyubim, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
No, we've been waiting for you for a really long time. What took you so long?
Nice. Well, took you, you've been busy. You've been very busy. All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about your new mission. I mean, you've done, like I said, you've been on Wall Street, but now you've got a new mission, and I want to talk about that, Wings for Heroes, because I think it's a phenomenal program. Um, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about some of the other stuff you have going on, and then at some point we'll transition into courage and leadership. Okay.
Okay.
So listeners, we'll be talking about all that and more right after this. So stick with us. And I'm back with my guest, Lyubim Kogan. So good to talk to you. I've been looking forward to this conversation when I found you online and read about the program and looked at your website for everything you've done. It's amazing. Wings for Heroes is such a powerful concept, right? Combining flying, paragliding with healing veterans. What was the spark that led you to create the organization, and why flight in particular?
I think the story is it's a really long story. I will go really fast through it. When I was in school in New York, I really wanted to work in the World Trade Center. That was like a big dream. And I actually my first office was at 50 Broad Street. If you look at the map of Manhattan, or if you look at the old address for the New York Stock Exchange, I think it was like 14 or 12 Broad Street. But then they built it out and they expanded to Wall Street. And we were just a few buildings down. So if I would walk out from our building, I would look left and I could see the front columns that they always show on TV of the New York Stock Exchange. And that was pretty, it was pretty inspiring. And it was really special to go to work every day because just 7, 8 years ago, I came to the United States with one bag of ski stuff in it. And then I'm working on Wall Street right next to the New York Stock Exchange. But it doesn't matter where you were in New York City, you could always see the Twin Towers. And to me, they represented, it was like the pinnacle of success of, free markets. And it's the most successful people in the world. They built those buildings and, that's where I wanted to work. So it was a little bit after I started, we had a group of traders that joined another company, and they invited me for the visit. And we went in. At that time, their office was on the 45th floor. And if you look at the pictures, like the windows in the World Trade Center, they were from floor to ceiling. It was all glass, and you could stand, lean against it, and you could see. We were facing like west, and I could see a little bit of north, and I could look towards the Statue of Liberty, towards Brooklyn Bridge. And at the end of the first meeting, they started talking about, what would it take for somebody to move from our old place to a new place. I said, I don't want to hear the conditions. I want to work here. And they were really surprised, because normally you negotiate, you look at what is being offered, but I really didn't care. Harlan, for me, just to be in the World Trade Center was like a dream come true. And of course, after 9/11, it was the next day when I was standing on the West Side Highway, and who is not familiar with New York City, New York City is like Manhattan is like a pizza slice. And the very southern spot is Battery Park City. That's where the Twin Towers used to be. And I was with a friend. They lived up north. And I remember looking down, and I saw that smoke going across the river, like towards New Jersey and towards the Statue of Liberty. And I realized that, I love outdoors. I always wanted to be outside. And here I am stuck in the city. I'm not stuck. I'm living in the city because I wanted to go to school there. I did that. And I wanted to work in the World Trade Center, and it doesn't exist anymore. So I decided to move. I went to Colorado, and then I got an offer to work in California. But in California, you have to get up 3 hours earlier. Well, 3 hours earlier than normal people, than everybody else, because we start in New York time. And then you're finished before everybody. New York is super competitive, and California is super relaxed. So that timing in the culture, it didn't really work for me. So I went for a little bit to Colorado, and then I got an offer. Maybe 6 months later, I got an offer to work in Austin, Texas. But the reason I'm telling you this is because our office was destroyed in the act of terrorism. So by me moving and trying to find a different place to work and live, I was classified as a displaced person. And the American Red Cross sent me a check for $15,000.
Wow.
So that's, the generosity that I'm talking about, coming and getting a scholarship. There was another thing that I experienced, and it wasn't expected at all. And I was hired in 2003 by American Express, and I moved to Denver. And that from 2003 until 2015, I lived in Denver, Colorado. And for me, it was my home. But a year after American Express, I came to the point where my entire time went to finding new clients. I became number one guy in the office, and then you're really busy keeping that spot. And I realized that, I really want to spend, like I told you, to me, having conversations and connecting with people, especially when you're managing, their retirements, that they work like 30, 40 plus years, and they really want to enjoy it. Like, it's important to understand what people want. And I decided to start my own company. And in 2004, for more than a year, I was homeless. I was building a business, but I didn't have a place to live. And we went from shelter to shelter, or these motels, cheap motels. And I really wanted to get out of that, because working in New York and making really good money, to going to like homeless, like once you tasted the good life, or when you don't have financial worries and now you don't know where you're going to be next night, it was super stressful. So I really worked really hard. And a few years later, when things started working, I started the radio show. It was called Secure Wealth Colorado. And then I dropped Colorado, and I started expanding to different states. And then I had 11 shows. I think it was 6 or 7 different states. And what I found out, I found myself on the plane all the time. I was just flying into an airport, going to a Hertz rental car. I had Hertz Gold membership. I would find myself on the billboard, and I was trying new cars. That was my, that's how I entertained myself on the road. You do that for a year or a little more, and it just really then the money started coming in again. So financial side was taken care of. And looking back at that time, I realized that, people who chase money, they're hardly ever happy, because you just, like I say, you're adding zeros, after some point, it's just comma, 0, 0, comma, 0, 0. And I'd say that my happiest time in my life, it was on Christmas 2004. It was one of my happiest times in my life. We were in a hotel by I-25. It's a highway that runs through Denver. And I could hear the truckers braking with their, engines going home for Christmas. And we were sitting on the floor eating organic chicken, and I remember that having that organic chicken and having it in place on Christmas, because I think one of the worst things to experience in life is not have a home and a really nice meal on Christmas. That was super special to have that organic chicken. And then I realized it was 3 years later. So in 2007, I made the business work and the money's coming in, but I lost the relationship that at that time was the most, important relationship to me. And I thought, wow, like if life is like this, when everything is great, what would it be like when we go through another downturn? And, this one thing that I make certain that I share is that just chasing money is not what's going to make you happy. And, my claim to fame was that I was looking, I have a finance and accounting degree, and I was taught where to look for things. And I was just digging through financial statements, annual reports, and I found in footnotes of Citigroup a $50 billion loss that would eventually go from footnotes in the back of the annual report. It would come to the front, but when it makes it to the front, it would be too late. So I just got all my clients and I told them about what I see, and we were out of the market before, the drop came. And when I heard the D word on TV, I don't know if you remember those times, but they wouldn't say depression. They were all sitting on TV and they were saying, the D word is coming, the D word is coming. And I said, this is the time to go in. I think it was like March of 2009. I said, this is when it's called capitulation, when everybody capitulates in the market, when everybody gives up, that's when you go in. But the aftermath was so negative that if you were in financial industry, people would really swear at you and they would spit in your direction. And nobody cared that I was the guy on the radio, for more than a year saying, look, this is coming. It's just, if one company is in it, they're all in it. That's how, big financial institution works. They find something that is lucrative and they all pile in. And when it doesn't work, they all run for the exit doors. So I was thinking about, completely getting out of that business, even though I didn't know anything else. That was my education and that was my profession, but it was just not, emotionally, it was completely draining. And then I got a phone call and I got invited to present at Steve Forbes's symposium. It was called Success in the New Economy. It was in 2011 that I went to New York. It was a little more than 10 years after I graduated, but I was like, going back to New York, it was a shocker. I really understood how the tourists felt. I felt like a tourist lost in concrete jungles, hundreds of people at every intersection, some places thousands, and you cannot get away from people. And I was the youngest guy in the room, and I don't remember what I said. All I could remember was I was on stage. You have these bright lights that are shining at you, and at the end there is this clock that is showing how much time you have left.
Right.
And the producer is standing there and he's like, and I'm like, I'm not done. I still have a lot to say. So anyways, I think I did really well that I got an offer to contribute to the book that Steve Forbes was writing.
Nice.
It came out in 2014 and it was a bestseller. All the proceeds were donated to different charities, so I didn't profit from that. And the next year, I was invited to speak with Brian Tracy at the United Nations. And just really quickly, Brian Tracy was the first guy who showed me how inadequate I was. In 2003, he sent his salesperson to American Express in Denver, and there was like 70 plus people in this little room. And his it's not Brian Tracy, it's his salesperson who is presenting to us, and his goal is to sell the tickets, because Brian Tracy was coming right after. It was a few days later. And that guy, he commanded the room. It was unbelievable what he did with the room. At one point, he told everybody stand up, and he's like, put your hands up. And he said, go like this. Sorry. And then he's like, stop, look around the room. And we're looking, and he's like, look, you guys are grown up people, you know? You work for American Express. Why are you acting silly? And everybody's like, because you told us to do so. He's like, exactly. And, you know, that was the moment when I realized that I need to learn how to be on stage and learn how to present myself, because my knowledge is really, I don't want to say worthless, but maybe useless. But I'm not using my knowledge if I cannot communicate to other people.
Right.
And I really invested in, I bought all his programs. I studied a lot. I practiced. And when I got an invitation to speak with him at the UN, that was like a big deal, you know?
Nice.
After finishing that, I thought I'm going to just print money, really, because with the book a year before, with you know, all the pictures and the posters, because they do major production, you know, they give you like huge movie-sized posters. But life had different plans for me, and the same year I found myself, in Ukraine, just visiting, and I got an offer to do an internal audit on the nationwide infrastructure company, and I spent there 2 months. And what happened was that the company was really successful. You know, they were growing, expanding. But when the war started in Ukraine, which was 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea, and then they removed their troops on the east side, they removed their flags. There were no flags on their shoulders. They called the green soldiers, like nobody knew where they came from and what country they belonged. But, you know, they were fighting for real. And the company was using the money to service their debt. And they went from a regional operator to like a nationwide company. And, you know, we had over 90 gas stations and 2 oil terminals with our own railroads coming into both. So it was, you know, it was big. And before, when they went through down times, they would just manage, and the bad times would finish and the good times come, and, you know, they would go on to the next stage. But at that time, it was, you know, it's still going right now. We're in 2025. It's 11 years later, the war is still going. And when something happens major and the company is going through downturns, there is a lot of finger pointing, especially at the top. It was his fault, it was her fault, it was their idea, it was his idea. I said, look, we got to stop this thing. You know, if you guys want to argue, you got to leave. There will be no more politics here. We really need to focus on working, because when I was there, you know, the company was 2 pay periods behind. Wow. And if you look back in the 90s, when the Soviet Union broke up, the company stopped paying people, and a lot of people, almost the whole population was starving. So the Ukrainian government implemented a law saying if you are 3 pay periods behind, that's criminal charges against the management. So we had 1 pay period to go before criminal charges would be brought up. And based on what I found, they knew they needed to let some people at the top go. And I had an offer to stay there. And I agreed to that offer without really thinking for too long, because I came as an American and people had hope. And if you walk into a situation where the situation is hopeless, like in any war, it's hopeless. And when people look up to you, I just couldn't say no. You know, I couldn't fail them. And I said, yes, I would stay. And that's how I ended up in Ukraine. Wow. One day we were at the gas station by a highway, and I saw a double amputee roll out on his chair from the gas station, and he went towards the highway. And I'm thinking to myself, where is this guy going? Because like, you cannot walk there. There is no pedestrian way. And I got busy, you know, I was doing my work, and that it wasn't even half hour, like a huge storm came. Thunder, lightning, heavy rain, winds, and I'm thinking about that guy. So I get one of the drivers, we get in the pickup truck, and I said, we're going in the direction, it's 10 minutes drive between the exits. And we find this guy on the side of the road. He's all in mud and wet, and, you know, we get his wheelchair in the back and we put the guy inside. I don't know if you ever had the situation, Harlan, when you're next to a person and you know that even if you clean them up, there is not much life left in them.
Right.
That was the
They've just
situation
given
that
up. Yeah.
it, just the life took out so much after the amputations and after being completely forgotten by the system, by the whole, by the whole country. But it just, he's been used and then, not recycled. He's been thrown out.
Yeah.
And I
Cast
really think
aside.
that, yeah, I think that was the last act of kindness that he experienced in his life.
Hmm.
Now, we fast forward 6 years, and the full-scale invasion starts. We're in 2022 right now, and I was watching one of those. I think it was on Instagram. There was this a young girl, a teenage girl, walks out in front of the packed stadium on her prosthetic leg, and she says, "Look, they can come and they can take a part of our country, and they can even take a part of my body, but they're not gonna break me." And that was the moment when I decided I'm done thinking that I should do something. I'm doing something. That's the beginning of Wings for Heroes, even though it wasn't Wings for Heroes at that time. But that was the moment when I decided that I'm going to do it. That's when it started.
And then, so you work with them and you use flight, the paragliding, to kind of build their confidence, to build their just kind of get them back in the moment, right?
A little backstory. So, I'm working in Ukraine. We have a really tough situation, and I knew I couldn't take my salary, because if I take my salary, we couldn't buy diesel or gasoline. And if we cannot buy it today and get it to the gas station, we cannot sell it, and the whole thing would stop. And if it stops, restarting anything is 100 times more difficult than keep on going. And I think it's a big lesson. Is if somebody is thinking that I'm going to quit, just think that if you quit right now, for you to start something or even the same thing, it will take you so much more effort. So we're working hard. I got a group of people that believed, they really wanted the company to survive. It was a survival. It wasn't about success. It was about how can we make it last another day. And for Christmas in 2016, they all pitched in. I'm a skier. And they sent me to Austria to ski on the glacier. Wow. So I am checking in the hotel and I see this little brochure. It says tandem paragliding. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I get my key, I turn around and I see another one. It says tandem paragliding. And I'm thinking, I've never seen it before, that this is a sign. So I grab that thing. I go up to my room. I didn't even address anything. I just dialed the phone number. A lady answers and I said, I want to go flying. And she says, okay, show up tomorrow. So I show up tomorrow at the top of the hill. She gives me this strong Austrian guy. He was like 60 years old, but he's like strong and tall. And he's like, hey man, is this your first time? I'm like, yeah. He's like, mine too. It's a universal. I don't like that joke, but they all, anywhere in the world you go, they use that joke. Anyways, we go off the mountain. And I spend my life on the mountain. I know what skiing is like, and I know a mountain, and then I see a chairlift is just disappearing. And I'm thinking, I don't even know this guy, I think I'm gonna die. So I said goodbye to my dad in the air. I start saying goodbye to my brother, and I'm like, okay, stop, this is ridiculous, just relax. I kind of relaxed, and I really enjoyed it. And when we landed, I had such a impactful, like I was like this, like my head knows that we're on the ground, but I'm looking at my hands and my hands are shaking. So at that moment, I decided that I needed to learn how to fly, and not just to fly, but get good enough to get people up in the air. And it took me about 6 years to get my, tandem pilot's license. But then in 22, I thought, look, when you are going off the cliff, it doesn't matter how brave you are, your subconscious mind knows that you're going to die. Because if it's a 1,000-foot drop, it's the end. You splash and there is nothing left. So I thought, what if we take amputees that went through traumatic experience and they lost limbs, and we just give them that positive traumatic experience that psychologists talk about, that sometimes it takes just a little bit to shock a person back into life. So the original idea, the first idea was, I'm going to find amputees and we're going to run off the cliff. Well, we cannot run off. We're just going to,
Right.
jump off the cliff with them. And I hope that that period of time will give them a relief and they will forget that they don't have a leg or two legs or whatever. And that was the beginning of the mission because, with time it evolved. I found out that they have other needs. I don't know if you want me to go in details, but
Well, I was going
that's
to say,
basically.
working with the veterans. I mean, a lot of the veterans, they carry visible and non-visible injuries. And so, what kind of changes have you been able to see in the amputees that you work with?
Can you see this?
Yeah, for the people that are
Okay.
listening to the podcast, it's a
Aha,
sign of, right? It's
we
you,
have
and
the guy in the middle, he's missing a leg.
he's missing a
And
leg,
the
right?
guy next to him, you cannot tell what he's missing because he's got everything in place.
Yeah.
But it was first amputees, and then I had a deaf veteran come in. He had a
Wow.
hand grenade drop right next to him from a drone, and it took off the right side of his face. And they stitched his ear. He cannot hear. When you see a guy who's missing a leg, you want to help him.
Right.
That if he needs help, most people want to do something.
Sure.
But if you see a guy who's deaf, you don't know
You don't
he's
know.
deaf.
Yeah. No.
So we had this situation. It was our opening of the season. The way the program is structured, they come here. First, it was for 7 days. They spent 7 days. Now they asked, okay, it was so great for 7 days. You pick us up early in the morning, and then sometimes you drop us off after midnight. Can we have a few days just to sleep? Just do nothing. We want to lay by the sea in the pool. And for your listeners, I run the program in Turkey because I have a sea here. I have a mountain here. And the most important thing, I have volunteers who have time. In America, people don't have time. That's the biggest issue one of the biggest issues that I ran into.
Sure.
But here it is working perfectly because when we have these guys visiting, the volunteers will watch sunset, moonrise, moonset. If they want to stay on the beach, somebody will stay on the beach. They will make fires, they will bring a DJ, they will do whatever it takes. So the guy who lost his hearing, I put them up in a hotel right across from where I live. So we're right across the street. And I get a phone call from the manager, and he's saying, Lyubim, you got to come right now. I run over to the hotel, and he says, look, somebody's shouting. Like the guests, the neighbors are complaining that they're shouting. And I said, I went to the room and I listened, and somebody is shouting. And I called them, and they say, look, we are making dinner. It's 1+1. I want to bring a spouse because I don't need to worry about caregivers. I don't hire caregivers. It's much easier to bring a spouse because they know now we need to go away. They do what they need to do. It makes things a lot easier. And they send me a picture, like they're making sandwiches, they're having tea, they're just talking. And I say, okay, guys, you got to keep it quiet. And I feel that they're like really upset. And I'm walking away from the front desk, and I'm realizing, well, he's deaf on the right ear. So if you're standing on the left side, if you're standing on his deaf side, you have to shout. You have to speak loud enough that he can hear you with the other ear, because this one is right one is completely stitched. And I go back to the front desk manager and I say, hey, listen, one of the guys, he's deaf. He's like, what? He said, yeah, he cannot hear. He doesn't have, they stitched his ear. And he's like, I am so sorry. I didn't even know. Why didn't you tell me? I said, I didn't think that it's an issue that we need to discuss. And that guy, he spent 3 years fighting. And after he lost his hearing, they stitched him up, they sent him back out. But then he finished, and it was less than 3 weeks until he came from fighting here to Turkey to relax. And all he wanted to do is stay inside and drink. That's all he wanted to do. He had this phobia of people. And we were having a breakfast. I had a breakfast where all the volunteers came out, and I told them, I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, and Afghanistan war started when I was 5. And it lasted until I was 16. So through my childhood, my first conscious part of the life Like my dad says, I saw them shining your boots. You were ready to go. And my dad always told me, you're not going to go. In former Soviet Union, the draft was mandatory. They would draft you and send you to kill people and maybe die in some foreign land. In that case, it was Afghanistan. So we were in the restaurant. We have a beautiful view of the Mediterranean Sea. The clouds rolled out and the rain started tick, 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 like on the top of the roof. And everybody's relaxing, enjoying, taking pictures. And I see this guy, he's going like this. And he's going under the table physically. And I walked up to him and I said, look, man, if you need to leave, go outside. When I speak, you'll come in and then you leave. After that breakfast, I realized that, first of all, he has permanent disbalance inside of, like, he's missing the middle ear and he cannot hear. So for him, that noise reminded him, he had it's a PTSD moment when he was back, in the trenches. And I said, you don't need to come up. You are excused. If you want to stay in the room and drink, you deserve that. I am in no position to tell you have to do something. Just, I make group chats and I tell them we're going this time, we have to be there. And I said, if you don't come, I know you're doing your best, but if you show up, I would love to see you. And the photo that I'm holding, it was actually taken like the next or the following day. And he shows up, he shows up for this photo. And that's where the picture came. So when you're talking about the invisible pain that they carry, first of all, some of them are he's so traumatized, Harlan. He was really traumatized. And they sacrificed so much, and then the system just doesn't have room for them. So the scars from seeing what they saw in the battlefield and then not being able to fit in to the society that they defended, it really breaks them. It really guts out all the humanity out of, of a human being. So yeah, the suffering that the veterans go through that had combat experience is just, we can only imagine, when you come in contact, you realize it, but I could not experience because, I haven't lived it.
Right.
That's
right. And, a lot of people want to support veterans, but they don't always know how. So what do you wish more civilians understood about the challenge these heroes face when they return home?
Another little backdrop to this answer. This past winter, I went around the world because I wanted to see how different societies and countries keep promises that they made to people who go and defend, our freedom.
Yeah.
And one of my stops was Geneva, Switzerland. And I ended up at the Red Cross Museum. It's an amazing place. I made the video. If you go to Wings for Heroes, we have links to our Facebook and Instagram, and I try to post videos and tell the story. I run the mission. I'm the only guy who's doing it. I don't have a crew. I don't have, I don't have sponsors. I don't have any employees. I have a lot of awesome volunteers, but a lot of it is done by me. And I just really wanted to make a point. A lot of people ask me, like, why do you do this thing? This is like the government supposed to do, or like some kind of system. But it doesn't work like that, because to put it in words of more than 2 US veterans that I've heard, they said, I survived a war, but I'm not sure if I'm going to survive the red tape at the VA. And when the person is traumatized, for them, it's too hard to fill out one paperwork. And if it gets kicked back, they normally would not try to do it the second time. So at the Red Cross Museum, I found out that in 1859, there was a young banker, Swiss banker. His name was Henry Dunant. He was traveling for business to Italy, and he arrived to a place called Solferino. I think it was June 25th of 1859. And he witnessed the battle of Austro-Hungarian army. There were 170,000. And then on the other side, there was the Imperial Army, which are French and Italians. There were about 150. So they went at each other so hard for the whole day that at the end of the day, when they stopped fighting, there were more than 40,000 dead and wounded soldiers. And there was not even one person helping. Nobody. So that guy, Henry Dunant, went around and he organized the villagers. At that time, mostly they were women, to help pull out the ones who were still alive. And they spent more than a week. They said there are some churches had more than 1,000 wounded soldiers in one church. After that, he came home to Geneva and he wrote a book that is called A Memory of Solferino. That book received such wide attention that he was able to start the Red Cross.
Nice.
And then 11 months after starting the Red Cross, they signed the first Geneva Convention. And the Geneva Conventions now, they stipulate how do we treat injured soldiers, prisoners of war, and innocent bystanders, because unfortunately, when the war comes somewhere, innocent people,
Absolutely.
I don't know what they call it, collateral damage or whatever, but innocent people get hurt too.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about, like that one guy started a movement that right now has more than 11 million volunteers.
Wow.
And from the Red Cross in that museum, I learned that there are 3 ways that you can help. That doesn't matter what cause or what issue we're dealing with. There are 3 ways you can help. Number 1, you can donate blood. And we have such huge shortage in every state that if you donate blood today, it will probably save somebody's life today. If not today, it will be tomorrow. So number 1 is donating blood. Number 2 is volunteering. And that's taking care and giving your most valuable asset, the time that we can never get back, no matter what.
Yep.
Giving it to the less fortunate, to the causes, to the mission. And the third way is donating money. So you can donate blood, you can volunteer your time, or you can donate money. That is the only 3 ways that you can help any mission or charity or whatever cause that is important to you.
Nice. But for the start of your program, Wings for Heroes, you've funded this. You haven't had a corporate
Yes.
sponsor or anything like that. You've been funding this.
Yes.
Wow.
So, people have ideas. Everybody has ideas. And I know no matter how noble your idea, unless it's working, it's really just an idea. And I really, my idea was that I had to make it fly before going out and asking general public. And just so I started podcasting in May of this year. So this is really new for me.
Nice.
But I realized that I cannot do it by myself because there are so many of them that need help. Like specifically, if you just take the first 4 years of war in Ukraine, like last year, there were more than 50,000 amputees. 50,000.
Wow.
So the numbers are they're mind-blowing. And after it started flying, I started going out and really, that's my weakness. I am probably the worst fundraiser on the planet because I think we raised $20 from all the different podcasts, and then we had another $150 that the donation came in. So,
Wow.
it's the financial part. The goal would be to not do these little retreats. The goal would be to run it year round. And because I've done it all by myself, I think I have the most efficient program that you can get because I'm the guy who schedules. So going back to the picture, I know we have a guy who had an amputation. He turned 20, 13 days before the war started. Then he volunteered. He flew drones. And he said that flying drones was not enough because he felt like he was hiding behind civilians. For 5 months, he wrote letters to the government asking, transfer me to the front lines. They transferred him to the front lines, and they were at the fight, and his commander went down, and he was the closest guy. And he said he was like within the arm reach. He said, I could grab him, and he got shot. He got 1 bullet right here, right? He has a bulletproof vest. He has 1 bullet stuck here, and another one hit his leg, so he couldn't make it to his commander. And he is our number 1. He's the first guy who flew. He's welcome to come to the opening and the closing of the season.
Nice.
But when he was here in April, I took him to my physical therapist, and she looked at his only leg that he has, and she said he's in big trouble because he's always putting pressure on one leg and his muscles are compressing. And now it's to the point that it's pressing on his sciatic nerve, and the sciatic nerve is the nerve that runs from your back all the way down your leg.
Right.
She said he can make one wrong move, and he can become paralyzed. And I said, what do we do? And she said, we have to bring him back. I said, for 1 month. I said, in 1 month you can save his leg. She says, I need to work with him for 1 month, and then we'll save his leg. So I told him, don't unpack your bags. You're coming back next month. And I didn't know how to do it because I spent the money on the session that we had. And actually, we left on the same day. They went home, and I flew to the United States. And I'm in the United States, going from different places, trying to meet people, and just get the mission going. And I'm spending money, and I'm thinking I could have spent that money and, save his leg.
Right.
But there is another side to this card. I printed it before I left, and this card says why we're here. And it's saying that our number one, the guy who's missing a leg, he has to begin a 30-day physical therapy program in May 2025 to save his only leg. This is not charity. This is second chance, not just for them, but for all of us. You are not holding a card, you're holding a promise that was kept.
Nice.
And I didn't know how I was going to fund it. Then 3 days before the month was going to end, I called the people that I work with, the company that I saved, and actually the guy who I put in charge and a lot of people who were working for him, they're still there. The teams are still there. And I said, look, we need $4,000 to bring him here for 1 month.
Wow.
And, they found the money, and 3 days later, he was on the plane. On May 29th, he started physical therapy. He finished it on June 25th. And meanwhile, while he was here, he had an interview and he got approved for a new prosthetic leg that has a knee. So he'll be able to run and jump and swim. And the government is paying for it. It's, $75,000 prosthetic leg.
Wow.
But meanwhile, we had swimming sessions. So I found the coach. I scheduled all the sessions. I drove him to all the sessions. I drove him to physical therapy. We did physical therapy together in the session. When he had days off, we had homework. And if you think about, when the leg is amputated, you have the limb, he needed somebody to hold the rubbers. So I'm the guy who's holding the rubbers. Then we're going for bike rides. And it was this whole month. I was either doing podcasts, I was spending time with him. And that's how things get done. If you want to get something done, if you're building a business or anything, you have to walk every step of the process. Otherwise, you're not in control of the business. If you don't know what's going on with your business, you are, in our case, you're losing money, if we talk about the business. But
Exactly.
It's I know how the process works, and I know what they need, and I know each little part of that.
Nice. Very cool. So what's your biggest hope and vision for the future of Wings for Heroes, and how can the listeners get involved in supporting the mission?
My biggest hope that I will find one sponsor who is in the position like I was when I was running a business in America. Being really busy, knowing that if somebody walks into my office who is real, I can write a check, but I cannot spend more than 20, 30 minutes with that person. So that's the biggest hope. But this guy our number one was 20 years old when the war came, and he volunteered. And then he wanted to go, become an assault brigade. I asked him, do you understand? Did you understand what you were getting yourself into? He said, oh yeah. He said, if I fly drones, I had about 95% chance of coming back home alive and well.
Right.
And he said, and being in an assault brigade, you have a 95% plus chance that you will die. And I said, if that happened again, what would you do differently? And he looked around, said nothing, I would do the same thing. And I said, okay, man, we are writing a book. So if listeners want to help us, we started the Kickstarter page, and I have the information for the book. On July 11th, I dedicated a month that I'm just going to spend writing the book. And I hope to get it done, by September or October. And the way Kickstarter works, you have a goal and people make pledges. If you meet that goal, you get the money. If you don't meet that goal, you get nothing. So whoever wants to support us, you can go to our page. There's a link to Kickstarter, and you can pre-order the book that we are writing together. And the book is called Above It All. And nobody can take away your dreams unless you let them to.
Exactly. Very cool. Well, we're like out of time, and I really wish we could talk about this more, but maybe we can have you back on when the book comes out to promote the book.
Okay, that would be
That'd
great.
be awesome. Okay. Lubim, thank you so much for sharing this. So the website is wingsforheroes.org, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And it's just like I said, I love the whole idea. I love that you've added physical therapy, psychology help for the veterans along with the flying, just to boost their spirits and get them back back to being themselves, I guess. And that's awesome. Very cool. I will have links to all of this down in the show notes for this episode. Listeners, every dollar helps. Anything you can do to help support the mission is helpful. So I will have links down there. Go ahead and pre-order the book. If you can donate to this Kickstarter program, try to do that. If you know a veteran who is an amputee and is struggling, have them get in touch with
Yes, on
Wings for
our
Heroes.
page on our page there's a contact button. All the information goes directly to me. So if you're referring somebody or you're inquiring for somebody, it will go directly to me. I'm the one who answers all the calls. And just really quickly, I think it's really important for us, when we're building businesses and when we're trying to build something in our life, we all face challenges. But if you have two hands and you have two legs, and especially if you live in the United States, the only reason that something is not working because something is not working in your mind. And
right.
the way you get out of any stuck situation is that, first of all, you make that decision, and then you make a commitment to do whatever it takes. I saw it in sports and building business. Like, you just take one step at a time, and then tomorrow you'll take one more towards your goal. And then when you get to that step, you'll see what the best next step is after that. And the longer you go, you'll see people dropping off left and right. People just stop and quit on their dreams. But you just have to take one more step. And after that, just make yourself to do one more step. So just switch your focus on doing one more step. And that way it becomes easier and manageable, no matter how big your goals and dreams are. It is all, they say a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. It continues with one step, and it also ends with one step too. So if it's important to you, you just got to keep taking that one step until you get to wherever you're going. And that is 100% formula of success. If you're moving, you're not going to fail. You will succeed.
Nice. Love that. All right, listeners, you heard it. Take that one step. Go out to the website. The links are in the show notes below. Wings for Heroes. Do what you can. Order a book, pre-order a book, donate to the program, and anything you can do to help would be appreciated. And again, like I said, if you know a veteran that is an amputee or has other issues, other traumatic brain injuries or anything like that, that could use this program, definitely get in touch. Go to the website and get in touch. And share this episode with your family, friends, colleagues, with everybody you know, because I think it's that important. All right. And yeah, Lubim, we'll have you back on once the book is ready. All right.
Thank you, Harlan. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care. And listeners, yeah, share this episode. All right. And stick around because there's always more coming. And that's it for me, Coach Harlan, saying so long for now.